pressure then.
No pressure. It's a bit slidey, these. So a wee bit about Pete. He's the Chief Executive of Positive Prison, Positive Futures, which is a Scottish charity that represents people with a lived experience of punishment, and he's working to reduce the harm caused by offending and re-offending in Scotland. The organisation contributes to improving Scotland's justice system, to reduce the harms caused by offending, and to bring about changes in public opinion to support the integration of people who have been, who are, or are subject to punishment. So I know that Pete grew up in Morningside, not very far away from here, and his life's taken him to the low lives and the high lives of Edinburgh. We're going to find out a little bit about that. He's been detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. I hope she enjoyed it. I hope she remembers.
More than I did.
Yeah. And that you've been invited to the garden party this year. Maybe she remembers you.
Maybe she will, yes.
So Pete is a bit of an unusual suspect, and he's turned his years of activism it was cycling and peace activism into now reforming the prison system and people's experiences of that. So a wee intro to Pete. So Pete, what or who first gave you the idea for Positive Prison, Positive Futures? Tell us how it all came about.
Very briefly, I came out of prison at the end of January 2006, having committed the offence of embezzlement and been rightly imprisoned for it. And I set off to work in the voluntary sector, thinking you had to be really rich or very clever with benefits. I didn't know people got paid in the voluntary sector, but it was the only place I thought would have me with my record. And I discovered after a couple of years that I was quite good at fundraising legitimately, which was kind of helpful. And through that process, I made connections with various charitable trusts, including the Robertson Trust. And even though we exchanged forms and applications and letters and money, I never met anyone in person until in 2010, when I was working for Dumfries and Galloway Small Communities Housing Trust. There's an acronym that comes out as dog shit. And they were crap to work for as well. But anyway, I came up with a project which would help alleviate rural homelessness. And the Robertson Trust asked me to go and talk to them about it. And it's the first time I'd met anyone from there. And before I sat down to ask for 48 grand, I explained I'd been in prison for embezzlement, and if that was a problem, I would just leave before I sat down. The woman I was meeting, Christine Scullion, asked me how my time inside had been, which is the nicest response you can ever give to somebody who's been imprisoned. And I said it had been surprisingly positive. And she said, right, sit down, talk about the housing, which we did. And at the end of that, yes, we got the money. And then she said, why don't you do something with your positive experience? And that's where it started.
That's where it started. So what did you learn from your years of activism in sort of peace and cycling and any other legitimate activity? What did you learn from that experience as an activist that you could transfer into your current role and into sort of a professional activism?
Right, well, I'm flattered to be called an activist, but I'll take it, thanks. The demonstrations I was involved in against the construction of Torness Power Station involved learning about non-violent direct action and working as a group and sharing skills in a way that meant we could do more than just individuals apart. And that led me to realise that you don't fight everything and you can do things in a different way. If I'd known when Christine suggested this thing about what she then called Positive Prison was going to involve becoming engaged with politicians, with civil service, with the prison service at all levels, and involved in influencing people, I'd have run away because it was something completely beyond my experience. But the idea of being polite, not being aggressive, but being clear-cut in what it is you're looking for, yes, that came across it.
So that's interesting. What do you think then means a Morningside boy can influence the civil service and the government? What is it that makes them willing to listen to you, do you think?
Right, I'm just checking that I don't recognise anyone in the room, apart from Brian from the prison service hiding over there. The one thing I think through my education, yes, I went to George Watson's. Not my choice, but I went there. £25 a term, that'll give you an idea of how long ago it was. And then I went to the Art College in Edinburgh to study architecture and photography. And through the education and my parental upbringing, I was introduced to the idea of discussing things without fighting, and through learning to be an architect or being trained as an architect, how to envisage something that doesn't exist and to communicate it to others, either through drawings or words. And that's...
So that visioning, being able to articulate a vision for
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And what is it over the last 5 years of creating this campaign and organisation that you're most proud of?
The fact we didn't have a plan, and we didn't know what we were doing.
Okay.
We just improvised everything. And it's a
common story.
It's a question of recognising opportunities that fit with your direction of travel, and not being diverted into what might be called mission creep, where you get diverted into something that's nice to do and comfortable but doesn't actually progress anything. And I think the other thing is I'm getting used to working at a glacial pace.
Okay.
Why?
Why are you working at a glacial pace?
Because
does change not need to happen now?
Well, it takes quite a lot to undo decades or centuries of practice, and to fight against it would lead to even greater institutional resistance. To go up to a group like the Justice Division of the government or the Prison Service and say, how about we get something better here? What about this? Rather than saying everything you've done has been crap and useless and we think it's horrible. Anyone would defend themselves by saying, well, actually, maybe it's not like that. So being constructive and offering a way forward is the way of going about these things, and being patient and communicating clearly.
Very good. I know that you're a natural optimist. People refer to Pete as Positive Pete, so there's an acronym between his organisation's name and his own name. If you were to think about the next wave of social change makers that are coming into our sector, or the people that you work with with your organisation, what is it that what positive message would you give to people who wish to go about creating social change or changing their lives? What's your optimistic terms for us?
Yeah, well, I think that those are two different things you're talking about, changing your own lives and changing things at a more wider level. You have to be clear what it is you want to be able to do. And secondly, the only person who can make you do it is yourself. No one else can tell you, but you have to be able to listen incredibly well. Secondly, when it comes down to encouraging a change in public opinion, it's important to come up with some reality, not just all the positive stories, but to explain that it's a struggle, and that the struggle is one that will benefit everybody eventually. I think we all would aspire to Scotland being a safer and happier place. Even the government wants that, which is good. And if you tag along with that and show that it's possible for change to be made to help people who might be seen as others out with our part of society, if you can help them move into society, then we're all in a better place.
So I've got a wee present for you. I haven't got one for you guys, sorry. The opportunity was too good to be true. Little rubber wellies. So you won a welly throwing competition. You did.
Yes.
Some time ago. It's what we get up to in Scotland, eh? Yeah. So these are erasers, welly erasers.
Right.
And if there was one thing that you could eradicate in the criminal justice system or the prison system, either a thing or a culture or a practice that takes place, what would you eradicate?
What would I eradicate? I'd eradicate the judiciary.
Why?
And replace them with people who understand justice in a way which isn't based on centuries of bad practice and precedents.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
There's a lot of good evidence to show that short-term prison sentences, particularly ones that end up with people being in prison for a year or less, don't work. And it's only because the sheriffs and the judges have been doing it for eons, that they keep doing it, even though there's plenty of evidence to show a community-based sentence is not only far better at reducing reoffending, it also costs an awful lot less in human terms as well as in financial terms. And we need to get that radically changed. I'm not suggesting that everyone is sent to prison for longer. I'm suggesting that prison is only appropriate for certain kinds of public safety rather than punishment.
Okay. Pete, as you can see, is an unusual suspect, just like many of us in the room. Pete, if there's anything else you want to share with the audience, please go for it now.
Do you have any idea how scary this is? It's nearly as bad as standing in a dock in a court, but perhaps not quite as bad as that. I think one of the things is to always remember that if you're a constructive person and if you have an idea that you can share in a way that's perhaps not entirely black and white with a little bit of humour in it, then a little bit of happiness and kindness goes a huge way, even in the most desperate and difficult places. And it's always good to remember that the other person is the same as you, regardless of where they come from. And there's not above or below or different. We're all the same.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.